So, I was taking a look through Netflix's Halloween films for something suitable for the spooky season, and I came across Wendell Wild. Now, I knew nothing about this film, which is kind of crazy because it's by one of my favourite directors, Henry Selick, and if that name's unfamiliar to you, then I can guarantee you've heard about his past films, including Coraline, James and the Giant Peach, and Nightmare Before Christmas. Basically, this guy is the king of Uncanny Valley children's films. Personally, I love when children's films have these darker undertones and more mature themes that are still dealt with in an age-appropriate way, even if they did feel emotionally scarring as a child. But yeah, I think at most this type of film is a cool way to gently introduce children to the more adult and unpleasant side of life, and at the very least they're probably going to be more interesting for an adult audience. I mean, when you're babysitting/parenting some child, which film would you rather have on? Coraline or Minions? Okay, Minions is actually like the ultimate switch your brain off film, so I might actually be going with that, but back to Wendell Wild, a kids film about trauma and survivor's guilt. Let's run through the plot. Our main protagonist is Kat, a cheeky in a sweet 8-year-old kind of way kid who will definitely not undergo any life-altering traumatic events throughout the course of this film. And these are Kat's living parents, Delroy and Wilma. They own a brewery in the town of Rustbank. Together, they're the Elliots, a super wholesome little nuclear family built on unconditional love and a shared passion for punk rock. That's actually kind of the in-universe reason as to why this film has such a banging soundtrack, including the likes of English punk band Extra Specs. I don't want to catch a copyright case by playing them, but you should check them out if that sounds like your cup of tea. Anyways, there's inevitably a crooked post in this whole white picket fence setup, and that comes in the form of this film's main antagonists, the Klaxons. Also in the form of a structurally deficient bridge, but we'll get to that later. Lynn and Irmgard Klaxon are trying to buy out the whole of Rustbank in order to build a private prison. This, of course, includes the Elliots Brewery, but Delroy and Wilma are not budging. The Klaxons are essentially greedy corporate overlords that would happily squeeze every ounce of happiness from the world if it means lining their own pockets. And they're essentially the philosophical antithesis of the Elliots' close-knit family unit. But we'll get more into that later, because we need to zoom back in on this plot, because we're 2 minutes in and Delroy and Wilma have driven off a bridge and drowned, and it's all Kat's fault. Okay, I'm just kidding. She was sat in the back of the car and screamed after biting into a toffee apple with a maggot in it, which, fair enough. Anyways, this scream, along with some crazy, pathetic fallacy making the roads all slippy, and the aforementioned structurally insufficient bridge, means that Delroy loses control of the car, leading to Kat losing both of her parents in one fell swoop. And I can't lie, this, along with all those bridge-related drownings in the Vampire Diaries, is making me seriously question the structural integrity of American bridges. Like, I don't know how accurate all of this is, but given the number of big river-spanning bridges you have over there, the ease with which people seem to be driving off them willy-nilly is concerning. So anyway, Kat's alive, but she's down 2 parents and up a whole truckload of survivor's guilt. Also, we've jumped forwards 5 years, and Kat is now 13, just to add a touch of spooky number-based superstition to the mix. Safe to say, things have not been going well for Kat. We're not given much detail as to the specifics right now, but she's basically on her final warning, now being part of a young offenders program called Break the Cycle. The Break the Cycle program places young offenders in schools as a kind of last chance at rehabilitation before the big house. It's important to note that the schools involved with this program are also monetarily compensated. And in a darkly ironic twist of fate, Kat's final shot at a better life will occur in the same town where her life irrevocably changed for the worse, Rustbank. And like Kat, this place has seen better days. The Klaxons have been successful in their mission of buying out the whole town, and Rustbank is a complete wasteland. The one place that it seems managed to hold out, Wilma and Delroy's brewery, became much less of an issue as it was burnt to the ground. But the jewel of this commonwealth is Rustbank Catholic. This is the school that Kat will be attending. Here we're introduced to 3 new characters. This one matters, these 2 less so. This is Siobhan Klaxon, the considerably less villainous daughter of Irmgard and Lane Klaxon. The accidental dislodging of a flagstone that nearly squishes Siobhan brings us to the final Rustbank Catholic student with a speaking role, Raoul. More on him later. Back to that flagstone on a collision course with Siobhan's skull. Thankfully, we're spared any stop motion renditions of a little girl being squished, because it turns out that Kat has prophetic visions and intervenes before Siobhan can get flatlined. No time to unpack all that right now though, because Kat is whisked away to meet the headmaster / head priest, Father Level Bests. Now, while Father Best thankfully doesn't live up to some of the more unsavoury connotations surrounding Catholic priests, he's definitely a little sketchy, and Kat quickly figures out that he's really more interested in the whole monetary compensation part of the Break the Cycle program than the bit about giving kids like her another chance. So, now that we've got Kat's whole current situation established, we need to talk about the other main characters at play in this film, Wendell and Wild. And to meet them, we need to travel down under. To hell, that is, because these guys are demons. Demon brothers, actually, and the sons of this giant demon dude, Buffalo Belzer. But this is far from a happy family dynamic, because Wendell and Wild committed some kind of treasonous act against their father, and now they're serving hard time maintaining Belzer's hairline with the help of this magical hair regrowth cream. I'll get back to that in a moment, because first I want to go over the logistics of this film's version of hell, because it is far from the whole biblical fire and brimstone shtick. Here, hell takes the form of a twisted fairground, all situated in and around Belzer's giant demon body. I love this concept, and all those cool stop motion animation details really just turn the place into one of the most whimsical depictions of torture and suffering I have ever seen, which is pretty cool. This fairground obviously isn't big enough to house every damned human soul, so my personal headcanon is that Belzer just built this place to make an eternity of torture more interesting. For him, at least. And this passion for fairground design is also something he shares with his sons, Wendell and Wild. These two have been meticulously planning their own dream fair, but obviously these plans are stuck in development hell due to the whole them being prisoners thing. So, moving back to the brothers and their magical hair cream, this stuff can do far more than just regrow hair. It can also get the demons high as fuck. Yeah. Wendell and Wild uses stuff to trip balls, but aside from its hallucinogenic properties, we also find out later that this hair cream can also be used to resurrect the dead, which I'm sure you can imagine will be very important later. So, with these titular demons established, let's head back topside where Kat's attending her first class taught by the badass nun Sister Hele. A whole Cthulhu-looking octopus chain of events leads to Kat getting zapped by a Beelzebub, which is kind of a semi-sentient interdimensional conduit between the living world and hell. This encounter leaves Kat with a freaky hand-mouth thing, which Sister Hele warns her to keep hidden, but Kat, thinking she's just been nommed on by that aforementioned Cthulhu-looking octopus, basically tells her to piss off. Now, this freaky hand-mouth thing is actually a Hell Maiden's mark, because Kat and Sister Hele are both Hell Maidens. The film doesn't really go into the specifics of what this means, but the headline is that Kat and Hele have the ability to raise demons up from hell. It's also probably behind Kat's prophetic visions and the reason why Hele can turn into a trail of smoke to get about, because yeah, that's something she can do. Now, you may have put the pieces together already, but through some supernatural hijinks, Wendell and Wild get in contact with Kat and convince her to summon them up from hell. They do this by promising to resurrect her parents upon their arrival, and now they don't actually have the power to achieve this, but thanks to that magical hair cream that we touched on earlier, that little issue is swiftly ironed out. But before we can get to the whole demon summoning parent resurrecting portion of the film, there's something that needs to be addressed, because Father Level Bests is dead. He was bonked on the head by Irmgard Klaxon, because it turns out that the good father was actually in cahoots with Klaxcorp. These three hatched a dastardly plan to funnel kids from the Break the Cycle program into the school, and when they fail in their rehabilitation, straight from the school to the Klaxons' private prison, lining everyone's pockets in the process. However, there's a slight hitch in this plan because the Rustbank Town Council are blocking the Klaxons prison from being built, and Father Best was tasked with finding a way around that. Which he did, because the Town Council could be outvoted by the unscrupulous old guard. But they're all dead, and now for his failure, so is Father Best's. So, back to Kat. She needs 2 things for the demon summoning ritual: the Beelzebub, which she loots from Helly's classroom, and Witness, which she acquires by roping in her least annoying classmate, Raoul. He's the loner, artsy kid who nearly flatlined Siobhan earlier in the film. And just a little sidebar on him, Raoul is actually trans, hence why he's the only male student attending an all-girls school. The film doesn't really draw attention to this outside of a couple of moments, but it is made explicitly clear. There's no vague allusions here, which I think is pretty cool. It's obviously important to have LGBT stories that center around the experiences and struggles of that character as it relates to their queerness. However, I'd argue it's equally as important to have characters that just so happen to be queer without it being the dominant part of their story. That's good representation. I know this is by no means a revolutionary take. There's tons of LGBT stories that don't focus on the LGBT of it all, but this kind of representation is much less common when it comes to trans characters, largely due to their infrequency compared to the number of gay or bisexual characters, for example. So yeah, pretty groovy, Wendell Wild, nice job. Okay, sidebar over, back to the film. Kat performs the demon summoning ritual of her parents' grave, and it works. Kind of. Wendell Wild emerged topside, but in a different part of the graveyard to Kat and Raoul. So, thinking the whole thing was a bust, the pair of them head back to the school. Meanwhile, Wendell Wild set about testing the hair cream's powers of resurrection on the most easily accessible corpse, that of the freshly buried Father Bests. The brothers have this half-baked scheme involving raising the dead and blackmailing them for funds to build their fairground, but thankfully Father Best has a better idea. Remember the whole Clacks Corp council vote issue that couldn't be solved because the old guard had come down with a slight case of death? Well, death isn't such a problem when you have a resurrecting hair cream. So Wendell Wild officially jump ship to Team Claxon, and once the Claxons have recovered from the shock of their murder victim miraculously rising from the grave, the group enter a mutually beneficial partnership to raise the old guard, usurp the town council, and become fabulously wealthy. The Claxons do have one stipulation though: the demons are not allowed to resurrect any other humans outside of the old guard. So basically no happy family reunion for Kat. Back at the school, Father Best makes his undead debut, which obviously alerts all those in the know that some demonic hijinks have been occurring. This includes Sister Helly, who goes to consult the school's janitor, Manberg. These two have a pretty hostile relationship, but it seems they were some kind of demon-hunting duo back in the day, which Helly clearly holds some resentment about. To fill in the blanks a little, I'm guessing Manberg trained Helly to use her Hellmaiden powers to summon demons from hell, after which they were captured and added to Manberg's collection of demon-filled jars. Anyways, back to them in a bit, because Kat and Raoul have escaped the school and are in the process of tracking down Wendell and Wild. The pair manage to find the demons, but things don't go quite to plan, because Wendell and Wild trick Kat into swearing allegiance to them under the guise of it being the only way to resurrect her parents. They are, of course, lying and send the now enslaved Kat off to get them takeout, while Raoul is made to stay and help dig up the old guard. Now, a little detail about the magic hair cream is that while it can resurrect the dead, it cannot reverse any decomposition that's occurred up to that point. That's why Father Best isn't quite looking his best anymore, and why the old guard are essentially skeletons, having presumably been dead for quite some time. But that's nothing a new wardrobe and a fresh set of eyeballs can't fix, so after a little makeover courtesy of Wendell and Wild, the old guard are back in action and ready to do the Claxons' evil bidding. The demons are still holding Raoul hostage after all this, but thanks to some quick thinking on Raoul's part, and the demons getting blackout on hair cream, he manages to escape and immediately goes to resurrect Kat's parents because Raoul's an altruistic king. Unfortunately, he does end up being recaptured by Wendell and Wild, but that's not important right now because yay, Elliot family reunion, woo! This heartwarming sequence is cut short though because obviously Raoul is still unaccounted for, and so Kat sets about rescuing him, which she does. But since this kid is not allowed a moment of peace, things go south quickly. See, when Kat swore allegiance to Wendell and Wild, her Hellmaiden mark turned all green and glowy and started ragging her about the place, and it seems like the effects of this are really starting to take their toll. But thankfully, Sister Helly comes to the rescue. She takes Kat back to the school to see Manberg while instructing Raoul to stay with Kat's parents. Here, Kat, with the spot of Helly, must enter the redemption chamber and battle a spectral manifestation exhaustion of all her trauma and guilt in order to stop the Hellmaiden mark from consuming her. Okay, time for a little bit of analysis. My interpretation of this whole thing is that the Hellmaidens all hold some kind of deep-seated guilt and self-hatred, whether warranted or not. Obviously, Kat was in no way responsible for her parents' death. As we've established, that was entirely the fault of shoddy bridge construction. However, in the redemption chamber, we also learn that she may have possibly killed, or at the very least assaulted, one of her childhood bullies, hence why she ended up in the Break the Cycle program in the first place. To go into more theoretical territory, I think all of this anger and darkness in a person like Kat kind of opens up the doorway to hell, and these metaphorical inner demons become actualized real demons that she can communicate with. Taking this idea further, that's why swearing allegiance to Wendell Wild was so detrimental for Kat. She let the prospect of seeing her parents again blind her to the consequences of giving in to the darkest parts of herself. And honestly, given the unbearable amount of survivor's guilt this kid was burdened with at such a young age, who could really blame her? The resolution to all this is equally as symbolic. In order to regain control of her life, Kat must free herself from the chains of her past. Quite literally in this case. But the film takes it further than Kat simply needing to move on from her past self. Instead, Kat needs to acknowledge that the bitter and angry parts of herself are still exactly that, part of her. All the pain and suffering she's endured, while horrific, can't be undone. And ultimately, she must reconcile with her inner demons and work to replace the anger and guilt that fueled them with kindness and compassion. Self-love, basically. So yeah, this was definitely my favourite thematic part of Wendell Wild, and it all goes back to what I was saying at the start of the video about how much I love children's films that incorporate some more mature themes. I think it's beneficial for the kids watching and interesting for adults like me to analyse. But anyways, we still have some more film to cover, and unfortunately we're going from my favourite part to my least favourite, the ending. Yeah, because while I liked a lot of the plot threads in this film, there is just a lot going on and a lot that needs to be resolved. It kind of makes the final 15 or so minutes of the film feel super cramped. So I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of everything that occurs. First off, we've of course got the Old Guard successfully swaying the town council vote in the Claxons' favour. As such, we've then also got the Claxons preparing to build their prison. Buffalo Belzer ascends from hell, and no Hellmaiden required this time. He just does a little hop, skip and jump, but this does result in the destruction of the Torture Fairground. But yeah, he's pretty pissed about the whole sons escaping hell and stealing his hair cream thing, but it's all resolved fairly quickly because he sees a big mural that Raoul painted showing a mother protecting her baby, and this reminds him of the importance of family, I guess. Yeah, unfortunately I think the demon plotline suffered the most in this overcrowded ending. Following Belzer's whole epiphany, Manberg conveniently appears with all of his demon jars, which it's revealed actually contain the rest of Belzer's children, and he trades the jars for the safe return of Kat, Wilma, Delroy, Helly, Wendell and Wild. Belzer also promises to let Wendell and Wild help redesign a new fairground since the old one was destroyed during his ascent from hell, so looks like the Dream Fair mission is a success. With that situation all sorted, Belzer heads back down to hell, but not before revealing that the magic hair cream is more of a temporary fix than a lasting solution. That means Wilma, Delroy and all of the other previously deceased individuals will soon be finding their way back into the ground. Starting with Father Bests, who pops his clogs for the second time in this film. Obviously, as upsetting as this is for Kat, having only just got her parents back, I do think the unavoidability of their deaths is very important to the film's message. Wilma and Delroy are a part of Kat's past now, and her acceptance of their death is a crucial part of moving forwards and finding closure. This also provides a chance for Kat to lean into some of that personal growth, as she uses the final doses of the hair cream to revive some of the brewery workers rather than using it to buy more time for her parents. Now, as to why she chose to revive the brewery workers, well, you might recall earlier I mentioned that the Elliott's brewery had burnt to the ground under mysterious circumstances. Yeah, well, no surprises, it was the Claxons behind the whole thing, and the brewery workers act as the witnesses needed for their arrest. But before that can happen, there's a whole fight sequence between the Old Guard battling on behalf of the Claxons and basically everyone else, including Siobhan. The Claxons do actually see that their daughter is part of this group and still order the old guard to mow them down with heavy machinery. Yeah, that's what I was getting at way back at the start of this video when I said the Claxons are pretty antithetical to the Elliots when it comes to family dynamics. These guys are hella dysfunctional, and not in a cute quirky way, but in a familicide kind of way. In fact, pretty much as soon as it's clear the jig is up, Guard tries to nobble Lane as well. So the old guard end up being dragged back to hell, and this film ends with a sweet little sequence between Kat and her parents where she uses her psychic visions to show them an optimistic glimpse into Rustbank's future. Up until this point, these visions have only really shown misfortune, so it's a nice little reflection of Kat's new outlook on life that she's able to see such a happy future for herself. And that's Wendell Wild. I really enjoyed this film despite suffering from a few too many plot points, but I do have to say, even though Wendell Wild has a higher age rating than Coraline, it's not nearly as creepy. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do just love the uncanny terror that Coraline evokes, and I was kind of expecting a bit more of that here. But Wendell Wild does tackle some more mature themes, in particular death and survivor's guilt, so the higher age rating does make sense. But one thing that Wendell Wild does excel at is that, along with all of Henry Selick's other films, it's an absolute masterpiece of stop motion animation. The details and artistry present in this film are just phenomenal, and for me it's an absolute privilege to see the craftsmanship and dedication of so many talented people come to life like this. So that's all for now. Thanks for watching, leave a like if you liked it. Bye!